We've been conditioned to fend for ourselves, and to demand independence from one another, because everything was taken from us. Now that our community support systems have been stripped away, we feel compelled to chase the latest status symbols, like keeping up with the Joneses, piling up bills on multiple cars and houses, and stretching ourselves thin. This desperation has warped our relationships and family structures. In many African cultures, polygamy historically wasn't about sexual gratification or more women for me, it was a strategy for economic stability and mutual support. Co-wives contributed to the family's well-being, farming, childcare and managing household resources. There was no stigma, because everyone understood it as an economic and communal arrangement. But in westernized, European mindsets, both black and white, polygamy is viewed through a lens of romantic jealousy. We've absorbed those Roman antics of love and exclusivity, the idea that he's mine and mine alone, so any sharing is betrayal. That framework makes polygamy impossible for us, because we prioritize emotional ownership over collective benefit. African American men haven't been raised with polygamous structures or communal cooperation, so they default to monogamy as a symbol of masculinity and success. They see women as someone to love on, not as partners in building the tribe's prosperity. This mismatch in expectations, between women longing for security and men unprepared for shared responsibility, dooms any attempt at polygamy. When women find themselves supporting children on their own because the father can't, or won't, hold up his end of the bargain, resentment brews. Yet we can't fault men alone. Many women, influenced by consumer culture, chase after romantic ideals set by mass media, perfect looks, designer clothes, long nails, eyelashes, cosmetic enhancements, all to attract a real man. But those same women aren't real themselves, they're wearing masks of makeup and weaves, buying into a fantasy. Then they wonder why the men they choose, molded by those same media standards, turn out to be the same kind of unreliable partners, just with different clothes. We've all fallen prey to flashy illusions, Mr. Perfect in courtship, only for him to morph into Mr. Comfortable once the lease is signed. 4 years of courtship, a ring, a cosign, and suddenly you barely recognize him. That's because he can't sustain the performance. And you can only blame yourself a little. Your standards were dictated by magazines and television, not by real wisdom handed down from your mother or grandmother. Remember when grandma warned you, and you dismissed her? If mom said she didn't like him, it wasn't because he'd serenaded her with I love you, it was because she'd encountered a man like him before and learned the hard way. But we placed ourselves above that experience, put ourselves on a pedestal, pretending our hearts are immune, that this time it's different. True love isn't the sweet words and grand gestures, it's provision, protection and partnership. It's holding down a job, paying the mortgage, and making sure your queen and your children are cared for. You can't wait for love to show up, you demonstrate love by providing security and stability. When that foundation is solid, the emotional bonds follow. Our community teaches us to pick our men based on superficial markers, high-paying job, nice car, designer suit, the perfect accent or swagger. But if your standards are nothing but a checklist of external achievements, you're bound to choose the same personality type over and over, just with a different haircut or outfit. And when the relationship sours, you chalk it up to the wrong guy instead of the same kind of guy. At some point, older women catch on. They've mastered the game and can manipulate younger men, because they've learned how to navigate these broken systems. They collect resources, and partners, like trophies, knowing exactly how to deploy them. And our own successful black businessmen, those billionaires we admire, are often celebrated for their flashy wealth, cars and mansions, without ever seeing the blueprint of how that wealth was built. Now, with reality TV and the internet, we see the deals, the exploitative contracts, the shady advances. We watch black record labels rip off black artists. No wonder so many up-and-coming artists end up homeless, still owing money to the very people who promised to nurture them. We've become our own worst enemies, selling bad vodka, overpriced clothing, cheap merchandise branded with our faces, all sourced from the same overseas sweatshops. And when tax season rolls around, instead of opening community centers or parks in the neighborhoods that raised us, we write checks to cancer foundations and wish-granting organizations that have nothing to do with our own people. Even Jay-Z, despite his wealth and influence, can't escape the master system. One ill-advised comment about Jewish people, and suddenly his music stops playing, his perfumes lose distribution, even his longtime partnerships dissolve. The white establishment tolerates us up to a point, but they'll cut us off in an instant when we step out of line. We're still slaves, only with bigger bank accounts. To break free, we must return to an African state of mind, to communal values, true self-knowledge, and collective prosperity. We're richest when we pool our resources, share our homes, and support one another. Why own 18 cars when 3 will do? A family car, a flex car, and a work vehicle. Why chase more women when you already have a wife and children? Why buy a 40-room mansion just to live alone inside it? We'd rather have a tight-knit community under one roof, raising the next generation together. It all starts with focused intention. Move away from the dictates of Caucasian culture, its materialism, its hollow romance, its individualism, and realign with ancestral wisdom. When we stop tearing each other down and start building each other up, we'll tap into our true potential. We'll transform from new slaves with money into masters of our destiny, and of our communities. Over the past 14 centuries, invading Arab forces swept into Africa, imposing their faiths, Islam's 5 pillars and its pantheon of Arab gods, and in doing so enslaved Africans not only physically but mentally, conditioning them to adopt these foreign religions as their own. Later, under European colonialism and the transatlantic slave trade, Christianity was similarly forced upon African peoples, further entrenching spiritual bondage. When those same African traditions and spiritualities finally reached America in the 1960s, alongside yoga, Eastern mysticism, and a host of other non-Western philosophies, there was a true cultural explosion, as people experimented with anything that could free them from what had been labeled American identity. In 1963, our master teacher arrived, bringing in indigenous African science, and published the foundational texts behind the 9 Ball. These works were not merely academic, they were scientifically formulated blueprints to liberate African people in 3 dimensions, spiritually, mentally, and physically. Unlike other esoteric systems that isolate the 7 chakras or 7 seats, Wu-Nup offers both exoteric and esoteric teachings. It unites physical, empirical knowledge with spiritual insight, defining precisely what spirituality is, and what it is not. Worship of a remote spirit god alone cannot sustain us. True spirituality is rooted in quantum physics, in understanding how consciousness and matter interact. Our master teacher provides the formulas for applying this knowledge in daily life, because information without application is sterile. We are not waiting for any savior. No Jesus will descend to rescue us. We must save ourselves, for we are the original gods from whom all others derive, and those who control formal education have systematically obscured this truth to maintain their authority. Instead of turning to Krishna, Buddhist monks, or other foreign traditions, Africans must finally embrace Wu-Nup, the first and only culture validated in the West as authentically African, and make it work for us today. I recommend starting with the book What is Soul and Spirit? And the Science of Healing. They lay out factors, practices, and, most importantly, application protocols. As our master teacher says, only that which we actively embody can liberate us. Turning to genetics and our origins, our sacred texts explain that the human body is a hybrid product of extraterrestrial interventions and original pure African biology. In primordial times, a group of extraterrestrial beings, the fallen ones, descended, violated intergalactic law by mating with terrestrial humans, and produced violent, flesh-eating offspring who brought chaos and disease. This adulteration of our genetic line created natural defenses in the female body against foreign embryos. The egg sac that envelops the fetus is actually a protection against alien DNA. Only by understanding these layers of our genetic evolution, and cleansing ourselves inwardly and outwardly, through diet, sound, color, and knowledge, can we restore our original divine purpose. Symbols reinforce these teachings. The Ankh has long symbolized eternal life and the union of male and female. In 1963, our master teacher introduced a modified Ankh inscribed with Yeshua, representing the first resurrection, from ritual religion into right knowledge. After 2012, with the dawn of a new solar cycle, the double Ankh emerged to signify our second resurrection, the affirmation era, when we move from mastering information to embodying it. The double Ankh also represents the star children, our reincarnated souls, returning to reclaim their destiny. The red dot at the center is the soul, the crescent is the mother, the vertical line is the father. Together, these elements map our cosmic lineage and our path of spiritual rebirth. Our scriptures, the holy tablets, the black book affirm these truths. In the first 10 verses, we learn that NWPU is the true guidance, predating creation, that its rituals and precepts unlock spiritual, mental, and physical well-being, that it unmasks deception and stands immutable, even if others refuse to acknowledge it, and that those who polluted the earth were those who refused to heed its laws. By studying these writings, verse by verse, and connecting them with our master teacher's later clarifications, we assemble a coherent, multidimensional picture of our origins, our present challenges, and our ultimate liberation. So, take up pen and pad, delve into Behind the 9 Ball, explore what is soul and spirit, and begin applying these teachings. Only through action, through living this science, can we cast off 4,000 years of spiritual and mental enslavement and rise into the fullness of our divine inheritance. Now, addressing the question of the 144,000. This has appeared in many traditions, from the 12 tribes of Israel to modern symbolic interpretations, and our master teacher has guided us to view it both historically and doctrinally. In early Judaic contexts, the 12 tribes each contributed a subset of 12,000, totaling 144,000. As our study deepened, we learned that each successive religious school from Hinduism through Zoroastrianism, Mosaic Law, and Islam, adopted and adapted this number for its own soteriological purposes. In those contexts, the 144,000 represented the select souls picked up for sustenance or spiritual food at a decisive moment in history. Our scriptures refer to Nanar Sin, the bright and morning star, whose mission was to gather these chosen ones, a motif echoed even in popular culture, as in the film The Fourth Kind, which draws on Alaskan events to dramatize this very selection. Symbolically, 144 reduces numerologically to 9, an important number in many ancient African traditions, yet much of that deeper meaning remains to be revealed. Our master teacher has also taught that, in our era, only a small fraction of the nearly 7 billion people on earth will be able to fully grasp and adhere to the rigorous discipline of our doctrine, purifying themselves inside and out. Next, let us consider questions of spiritual and genetic confusion arising from intimate relations. Our tradition teaches that every exchange of DNA carries not only physical but spiritual energies. The genetic kiss describes how multiple sexual partners, especially more than 4, can introduce diverse spirit beings into one's genetic makeup, leading to inner voices or alternate personalities vying for expression. This is not a moral indictment of our sisters or brothers who have followed the prevailing cultural norms, built on the if it feels good, do it philosophy, but rather a recognition of how those norms have shaped behavior. As animists, we know that every act carries spiritual consequences. Thus, a woman who has had many partners may find conflicting voices within her. Likewise, a man who engages in serial relations mixes his own spirit energies and those of others. The path forward is not judgment but healing, the cure. Our master teacher, a doctor of the soul, has provided practices, meditation, visualization, study of sacred texts like the Mind Book, the Holy Tablet, and the Living Soul, to help each person recognize and purify their true inner voice. Sisters have their own rites of cleansing. Brothers and sisters must first attain stability within their own personalities before entering a stable relationship together. Finally, on the question of the Anunnaki and the origins of other species, carnivorous or otherwise, our master teacher guided us through comparative study of the ancient cookbooks, the Bible, Quran, Torah, all of which contain vestiges of Anunnaki lore. Originally reptilian in form, the Anunnaki, half divine, half reptoid, settled on planets like Earth. They taught us agriculture, religion, and governance, yet their true teachings were spells to bind us. One of their own, a being named Enki, half Anunnaki, half reptilian, sided with the primordial deity Nun, and became our guide, bringing with him his son and grandson, Murdoch and Nabu. These ancestral narratives explain the roots of our genetics, the cataclysmic fall of certain races, and the emergence of civilizations from Sumer to Egypt and beyond. Through Baba's revelation, we understand that these accounts, and the cosmic battles they describe, are not myths but recordings of real events that shaped our species and our spirit. Throughout history, the great master teacher has never switched doctrines on us. Rather, he served as a living vessel for a multitude of exalted beings, each the true master of a particular school of wisdom, who spoke through him to convey their deepest teachings. Imagine a master mechanic who knows every engine intimately yet encounters a novel problem. He must call upon a specialist, another virtuoso mechanic, to guide him step by step. In exactly the same way, our teacher's flesh became the instrument through which galactic emissaries imparted knowledge drawn from the vast archives of ancient Egypt, Babylon, Islam, Hebraic mysteries, sacred geometry, subatomic science, and more. Because modern readers are fluent only in English and conditioned by Eurocentric scientific paradigms, every lesson had to be couched in familiar terminology, even if that meant borrowing references from Caucasian textbooks on exotic matter or quantum fields. Thus, when he spoke of exotic matter, he wasn't describing antimatter or red matter, but a higher vibrational substance inaccessible to ordinary senses until one learns the original esoteric language. Those same scientists who marvel at his prefiguring of concepts absent from the academic canon are puzzled. How did he know? Not realizing that secret societies like the Rosicrucians, Knights Templar, ancient libraries of Egypt and Mesopotamia, and even extraterrestrial alliances have long safeguarded these records. At the heart of his volume-spanning oeuvre, over 700 separate works, lies a systematic breakdown of every subject field under heaven and earth. Each time he shifted from discussing Islam to Babylonian cosmology, it was because a different being, perfected in that tradition's mysteries, had descended to clarify arcane doctrines. To challenge his authority is futile. one cannot disprove his writings without disputing the very foundation of metaphysical reality. Beneath these cosmic teachings runs an even deeper narrative of genetic engineering and extraterrestrial diplomacy. According to the master teacher, the so-called Anunnaki were not a monolithic race but a star federation under Anu's sovereignty, sending multiple species, greys, various reptilian clans, feline humanoids, across galaxies to seed life on Earth and experiment genetically. Ancient texts recount how Anu's descendants fractured human chromosomes, spliced in circular DNA segments, and selectively refined them into divergent food sources, our own subraces, so that some beings might resonate on matching frequencies and dine upon us. These otherworldly interventions are mirrored on our own soil by the fracturing of humanity into tribes and nations, each claiming its own sovereignty and most high deity. Just as the Zulu and the Congo peoples respect territorial boundaries in the wild, so too did the kingdoms of ancient Africa, from the Sahel to the Nile Valley, exist in a delicate balance, trading, warring, and intermarrying according to cosmic and climatic tides. When colonial powers carved up these lands with arbitrary borders, they ignited internecine wars, pitting distinct African species against one another under labels of tribe or religion. Modern Africans, African Americans, and the global black diaspora foolishly mimic European customs, languages, clothing labels, hair and body scents, thereby attuning themselves to denser, non-etheric vibrations that block access to the higher self. Our beloved K-spinach metaphor illustrates this. Raw, natural nourishment resonates at one frequency. Smothered in foreign oils and additives, it becomes palatable to the sixth density entities who crave negativity. If we only ate for health, as ascetics claim, we'd reject every seasoning, but the moment we chase taste over vibration, we fall under the sway of forces that wish to consume our essence. Thus, every injunction to stop doing this or cleanse that was a warning against rendering ourselves edible to parasitic intelligences. The teacher's words often seem contradictory only because we fail to appreciate that each directive originates from a different cosmic ambassador, each dialectically aimed at guiding us back to our intrinsic, African-rooted vibration. To reclaim our sovereignty, we must relearn our natural languages, don indigenous garb without shame, and awaken to the truth that our origins trace not merely to this planet but to a farthest shore of the universe, where our true story began long before the Big Bang or the myth of Adam, and where, if we listen closely, those same galactic allies still await our return. The pyramids stand as monuments of great grandeur, but beneath their awe-inspiring facades lies a body of scientific knowledge that has long eluded popular understanding. In his seminal work, The Science of the Pyramids, Baba delves into the engineering principles, astronomical alignments and material sciences that made these structures possible, knowledge that remained shrouded in mystery until now. He goes on, in a companion volume entitled The Mirage, to describe a ritual circuit around a black mirror, the Mirage, wherein practitioners pay homage to 24 deities. Entering the circuit is likened to a meditative journey. As one progresses inward, petitions are offered. Upon exiting, the divine assistance sought is received. Each stage of this passage, each deity, each offering, carries a scientific rationale, preparing the aspirant for transformation. His third book, The Beginning, reinterprets ancient Egyptian cosmology through a modern lens. Where the ancients spoke of amphibious gods emerging from the primordial waters, he explains that this is a coded reference to humanity's own aquatic origins, our embryonic development mirrors that of earlier life forms, yet over millennia we have lost sight of this egg-cracking birth in favor of the simpler water-breaking metaphor. He shows how the creatures, frogs, snakes, ram-headed deities, depicted on temple walls are not mere decorative motifs but symbolic markers of our evolutionary journey from aquatic to terrestrial existence. Underlying all these narratives is the figure of Risk, whose name derives from the ancient word Razak, meaning provider. Risk is portrayed as the progenitor of a galactic expedition. Coming from the 19th galaxy Ilion, the Neteru journeyed here to replenish resources, gold, magnesium and other elements, depleted on their homeworld. Their mission was to construct a protective dome of gold, analogous to a life-sustaining atmosphere, mirroring a cosmic pattern of creation and destruction. These ideas, he argues, are scattered through religious texts worldwide, from the Bible to the Quran, but their extraterrestrial origins and scientific underpinnings have been obscured by metaphor. He traces the interbreeding of star-seeded lineages, Anunnaki scientists blending their genes with terrestrial reptiles, spawning hybrid races, and shows how those early alliances and rivalries shaped human bloodlines and cultural divisions still evident today. Yet he insists that these complex narratives are neither fanciful nor purely mythological. They carry encoded truth about our DNA, our cosmic heritage, and the resonant frequencies we must retune ourselves to in order to remember. At the heart of his teaching is a living messenger whose incarnation in the mid-20th century marks the renewal of this ancient science. Beginning as a child in 1945, Baba quietly absorbed his role until, at 25, a transformative encounter awakened him to a lifelong mandate to guide humanity back to its primal frequencies. Through successive lessons, delivered over decades, Baba has walked students through the 7,000-year days of creation, each day equaling a cosmic cycle, past the 49,000-year threshold beyond which hidden truths lie. He teaches that sacred texts are not linear manuals but nonlinear scrolls encoded with magic formulas that reprogram our DNA. Just as a computer's binary code can be defragged and optimized, so too can our cellular memory be restored to its original purity. These scrolls, he reveals, are structured for 9 minds, those whose consciousness operates beyond binary, able to synthesize scattered passages, book number 240, then number 30, then number 7, into a unified whole. They recall our pre-Adamite ancestors, existing millions of years before the so-called week of Genesis, whose suppressed history thundered so powerfully in Baba's 1994 class that lightning and roar of thunder seemed to howl at the forbidden truth of 76 trillion years of cosmic lineage. The doctrine he offers, named NWPU, frames every ritual, every tone, every cultural form as a means of recalibrating our body's built-in antennas. Our fingers and limbs, segmented in threes, mirror tuning forks. Our DNA responds through sympathetic resonance to precise frequencies, filtering out dissonant white noise from the cacophony of modern life. As we synchronize with the ancestral wavelength, the wisdom of our star ancestors flows in, manifesting in renewal of the great monuments we once built, in technologies we once mastered, and in the cosmic purpose we once knew. Today, Baba's followers gather these scattered scrolls, feeding the forces, lost records of time, Atlantis, emotions, and apostates, cycles of the zodiac, not as disparate texts but as fragments of a single, living genome of knowledge. They read, they meditate, they integrate, and in so doing, they accelerate the planet's ecological and genetic restoration. For a remnant remains, those whose consciousness can ascend to the level of the creators themselves. Whether through affirmations, tone practices, or the precise study of our 223 unique human genes, genes with no known terrestrial precursors, each seeker recalibrates their mind, body and spirit to the true frequency of humanity's cosmic origin. In this synthesis of science, ritual and myth, risk, both as a planetary name and a principle of daring exploration, emerges as the essential element of self-development. To risk is to reach beyond the known, to venture into cosmic waters, to realign our DNA with the stars, and to remember the knowledge that has waited in our cells for eons. Only then can we stand again, as architects of worlds, guardians of galactic wisdom, and co-creators of the next great cycle of existence. The time to act is now. Our master teachers have always reminded us that there is no later, no pause button. What matters is what we do in this very moment. By studying together, asking questions, and applying ourselves fully, we fulfill our purpose, to use every ounce of our energy now to liberate our leaders so that we can all ascend to the next stage of our collective journey. I understand the fear that can creep in. As we learn more, it's natural to ask, if Dr. Malachi, or any of our master teachers, dared to speak truth, how did the powers that be manage to incarcerate him? And if I stand up and speak out, might they do the same to me? That fear has been woven into our people's DNA through centuries of oppression. But our master told us long ago, just as he predicted his own persecution back in the 1980s, that there comes a moment when we must stop waiting for divine rescue and take responsibility ourselves. Remember how John the Baptist was abandoned? Divine law does not always protect physical form, it empowers our courage and our unity to carry the mission forward. When they took him, they hadn't silenced the message, they had merely pressed pause on his physical presence so that we could step up and prove ourselves. While he was away, he taught us that enough of us, aligned and determined, can literally shift the energy of this world. Our collective power already exists, our question is only whether we will have the courage to wield it. Unlike those still trapped in external religion, worshipping Muhammad, Moses, Jesus, our doctrine places us on a higher stage. We incarnate Muhammad, Moses, Jesus. Each morning we rise, we step into that mantle. That is why, even wearing our African garb, our own brothers and sisters may look at us strangely. We are redefining worship as self-realization, standing in our own divine authority. We must also shed the old spell of white supremacy. Their power over us exists only because we have allowed it. Today, with the knowledge we possess, we are the keepers of our own destiny. No longer victims, we are architects of our freedom. The helping hand we seek has always been at the end of our own arm. Part of that liberation comes through understanding inclination, the natural traits of different beings in this universe. Our master defined how to discern others' energies and avoid their territory, just as we do with animals in nature. He traced back to the assemblies of Sahat, Orion and Al-Haadi, which established intergalactic commands, to maintain order across countless worlds. When the Anunnaki came here and broke those laws, grafting their seed into the planet's inhabitants, they gave birth to chaos and violence. But order is the foundation of all cosmic confederations. Interstellar laws keep even warring parties within bounds. Nature itself restores balance. Just as our bodies endure fevers and storms to expel disease, so Earth's climate upheavals now purge the corruption inflicted by the Caucasus invaders. Our task is not to fight nature, but to align with it. Language lies at the heart of our power. As the saying goes, in the beginning was the Word, and modern science confirms how sound frequencies and vibrations shape form. Our bodies are 75% water, and tones literally reconfigure structure. Online, you can find demonstrations of how sound sculpts water molecules. Search for frequency water visualization on YouTube, and witness firsthand how speech can heal or harm. Our master literally spoke us into being. He knows the original tongue of our ancestors, the precise phonetics that awaken our genetic memory and reclaim the divine spark within. When you learn Sabian in its proper tones, you block out alien interferences and manifest your inner true form. Reciting invocations or mantras in foreign or demonic languages weakens you. Speaking our mother tongue strengthens your larynx and your lineage's vibration. Some ask why his writings on extraterrestrial origins carry no copyright. In our tradition, knowledge is shared by vibration, by word and by heart, not by legal paperwork designed for commerce. Our masters wrote countless books, penned song lyrics for great artists, and taught truths without ever stamping a legal seal. They understood that the truth itself is copyright enough. If family members have crossed over and need guidance into the next realm, know this: our master, even while imprisoned, serves as a mediator. Spirits visit him bearing messages for those still living. He will relay them when he is free. Meanwhile, you remain the savior of your own line. Your blood carries their essence. By cultivating your inner disciplines, the balance of positive and negative forces, you provide the proper pathway for ancestors to ascend alongside you. Study the ancient Egyptian order, AEO, teachings on ancestor connection. The time is now. Take your place in this grand design. The Caucasus have us like a mouse, placed in a glass tube, free to choose left or right at a junction, yet confined within narrow parameters. The mouse believes it is sovereign, making its own choices, but the reality is that every option it has is preordained. We are led to believe in our freedom, yet we live under a global tyranny so subtle that most never question it. To break free, we must first recognize the walls of our confinement and then summon the courage to challenge them. Much of what we accept as reality is spoon-fed to us without question. Exams, for example, who writes the questions and dictates the answers but the status quo? To succeed, we must echo their worldview, thereby perpetuating their myths into future generations. Yet those who dare to question often find themselves marginalized. Our values, too, are largely inherited from bygone eras. We assign guilt and virtue based on beliefs codified centuries ago, without ever asking why. Yet the simplest question, why, can be revolutionary. Conventional religion offers judgment and eternal rewards or punishments, while materialist science presents us as cosmic accidents destined for oblivion. But there is a third way, one that many ancient traditions have hinted at: the understanding that everything in creation is a single energy in different states, just as water becomes clouds or ice. If energy is consciousness, then water can indeed have memory, and so can we. We are droplets of a vast, infinite mind, each experiencing existence through unique forms. Death, then, is merely a transition between frequencies, not an end. This esoteric knowledge, of our true nature, our eternal journey, and the mechanics of consciousness, has been suppressed for millennia. It threatens those who profit from our ignorance. Religion, science, economics, all have been co-opted to maintain control. The global economic system, for instance, demands perpetual growth, consuming ever more resources and condemning billions to poverty and environmental ruin. Politicians propose pouring more petrol on the fire, yet we accept it unquestioningly. We uphold conventions that defy logic, treating sentient animals as commodities, measuring economic health by the number of sick patients treated, equating rising house prices with progress while homelessness grows. This is cleverness without wisdom. True wisdom often resides in traditions labeled backward by the modern world, wisdom reminding us that you cannot eat money, that the earth is sacred, and that ownership of air and water is an absurd concept. Digging deeper, we encounter the undeniable reality that a handful of individuals have long orchestrated wars, manipulated economies, and steered technological development to serve narrow interests. Secret societies and mystery schools pass down esoteric teachings through initiation rites. Over time, this network was infiltrated by those who repurpose spiritual knowledge for negative ends, harnessing energy not for liberation but for control. Knowledge itself is neutral. Its ethical dimension arises from its application. The same principles that could yield unlimited clean energy or anti-gravity technology have been suppressed to maintain reliance on polluting industries and fossil fuels. Inventors who threaten this status quo found themselves imprisoned or marginalized. Our challenge, and our opportunity, is simple: to remember who we truly are and to have the courage to say why to every imposed limitation. Only then can we step out of the glass tube and chart our own path, in full possession of the knowledge and power that is rightfully ours. From its earliest roots, the New World Order, NWO, can be seen as a kind of basic religion and ideology that employs whatever vehicles are necessary to manipulate and control populations. Though its true name was once jealously guarded, it is now openly invoked by politicians around the globe, following George H.W. Bush's infamous declaration in the wake of the 1991 Gulf War that we have a vision of a new world order. Today, this concept underpins a vast, covert project to centralize power, political, economic, and even personal, into the hands of a tiny, elite cabal that understands the system in its entirety because they designed it from the ground up. Imagine building a car from scratch. You know every nut and washer, every system and subsystem, inside and out. The architects of the NWO know the global car just as intimately. They devised it to be easily steered, engineered every crisis and coded every institutional response so that, at each stage, public opinion is guided toward acquiescence. The ultimate aim is nothing less than a single world government, complete with a single central bank issuing a cashless currency of credit, a unified global military, and, in time, a microchipped population whose every move can be monitored and controlled. This relentless centralization, what its proponents euphemistically call rationalization, began at the level of local communities and has steadily ascended to national, continental, and now global scale. Efforts like the European Community represent penultimate exercises in regional consolidation before total world integration. Whenever anyone challenges these shifts toward ever more concentrated power, they are met with the same refrain: it's just progress, the world has changed, and we must adapt. Meanwhile, real alternatives are rendered impossible by a perpetual drumbeat of crises, manufactured events and media spin designed to bring public opinion to the point where it cries out, something must be done. At that moment, the architects of the problem step forward with the solution they had scripted all along, thus advancing the project one more notch. One startling illustration of how deeply this strategy reaches is the infamous Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, a clandestine document discovered in an IBM copier purchased second-hand in 1986. It outlines a comprehensive plan of mass mind control: keep the populace ignorant of systems and logic, bombard them with trivial distractions and emotional stimuli via low-quality education and sensationalized media, rewrite history and law to conceal inconvenient truths, and feed them junk ideas that sap critical thought. In this environment, confusion is not a byproduct but a profit center. The more confusion, the more profit. To gauge and further manipulate public opinion, sophisticated polling operations are deployed, not to reflect genuine sentiment but to amplify selected views until they become self-fulfilling. People inherently want to think as others do. Once told that 60 or 70% support a particular measure, many will align their views accordingly, further skewing the data and reinforcing the engineered consensus. Guiding and coordinating these efforts is a pyramidal network of secret societies, what some researchers collectively term the Brotherhood, whose apex cabal is often referred to as the Illuminati, the Enlightened Ones. Below the Illuminati are layers of organizations, Freemasons, intelligence agencies, academic institutes, whose lower-level members know only their immediate duties. Like employees in a compartmentalized corporation, they serve a grand agenda of which they are blissfully unaware, believing instead that their work is for the public good. Continuity across generations is maintained through familial dynasties, Rothschild, Rockefellers, and the like, and carefully structured initiatory rites that identify, indoctrinate, and pass on the true agenda to a select few. Central to this power structure is control of money. Fractional reserve banking allows private banks to lend out far more than they hold in deposits, conjuring credit ex nihilo. Debtors find themselves drowning in interest payments on money that never existed in the first place. Should they default, banks seize real assets, homes, farms, businesses, further concentrating wealth. The Rothschild dynasty's legendary exploitation of the 1815 Battle of Waterloo, when Nathan Rothschild used delayed news of Napoleon's defeat to crash British stocks, epitomizes how engineered economic shocks translate into colossal fortunes for insiders. In the United States, the Federal Reserve System stands as a towering monument to this financial manipulation. Born at a secret 1910 meeting on Jekyll Island, the Fed is a cartel of private banks that issues government debt at interest, paid by taxpayers, even as the banks themselves create the money digitally. Similarly, the imposition of a federal income tax in 1913, ratified under questionable constitutional pretenses, ensures that not only individuals but entire governments remain perpetually indebted to private interests. To mask these mechanisms and advance their agenda, the Brotherhood has spawned countless front organizations and think tanks. Cecil Rhodes's Rhodes Scholarships, the Round Table groups he founded, Britain's Royal Institute of International Affairs, Chatham House, America's Council on Foreign Relations, CFR, and the Trilateral Commission are all nodes in a vast network designed to shape elite opinion and, by extension, public policy. Decisions and proposals published in CFR's Foreign Affairs today become official U.S. policy tomorrow. International institutions such as the United Nations also serve as vehicles for global control. Conceived by CFR members and housed in Rockefeller-donated land, the UN is now being groomed to field a permanent world army, again, by engineering crises in Rwanda, the Balkans, and elsewhere, then citing the need for a robust, rapid response force under central command. Even national leadership is not immune. Secret societies like Yale's Skull and Bones count presidents and intelligence chiefs among their members, demanding fealty above all else. Elections in the US and UK are effectively controlled by those with the deepest pockets and media sway. Any leader who genuinely threatens the centralization project, Lincoln and Kennedy attempted government-issued, interest-free currency, meets an untimely demise, whether by assassination or by relentless media character assassination. Throughout modern history, the Brotherhood has funded both sides of conflicts, the French and Russian revolutions, both world wars, the Cold War, all to sustain a climate of fear and dependency. Its front groups permeate every sphere, from media and academia to business and religion, advancing the same dictum: create the problem, then offer the predetermined solution, each step tightening the grip of the New World Order. In this grand design, global tyranny is not enforced by tanks in the streets but by a continuous coup d'état on the human mind. Once understood, the only path to reclaiming freedom is to pierce the veil of engineered consent and recognize how every crisis and comfort alike has been orchestrated to steer humanity toward a singular, all-encompassing power. The Director General of NATO is always present at the Bilderberg meetings, which convene annually in a different location each year to chart the course toward what they term the New World Order. At its core sits a small, permanent steering committee, the true elite who shape the agenda and work on it full-time. Beyond them is a circle of regular attendees, media figures, financiers, corporate executives and other influencers, who grasp the agenda and advance it within their spheres of influence, though not within the Bilderberg inner sanctum. A third circle comprises invited politicians and other elites who often know little or none of the full agenda. They attend perhaps one or two meetings and are fed only enough party line to promote centralized world government, a global central bank, a single world currency and ultimately a world army. The strategy unfolds gradually through the formation of regional trading blocs, first the European Community, then NAFTA in North America, and a third bloc linking Japan and Australia. These blocs are first centralized economically, then politically and monetarily, and finally welded together on a global scale. Remarkably, as early as 1942 Joseph Stalin articulated this very blueprint in his writings. He argued that dividing the world into regional groups would prepare populations to surrender national loyalties more readily to a vague regional authority, and thence to a unified world government. Those who stand in the way of a United States of Europe, or any similar supranational entity, must be quietly undermined. Investigative reporting by the American newspaper Spotlight revealed that at the May 1989 Bilderberg meeting on La Toja Island off Spain, it was decided Margaret Thatcher should be removed as British Prime Minister for refusing to cede sovereignty to a nascent European superstate. A year later, despite her electoral mandate, she was indeed forced from office, removed not by her own party alone but by the subtle machinations of grey suit envoys who applied pressure on vulnerable MPs, threatened their careers, and enlisted the compliant media to erode her support. Key figures recur throughout this network. Lord Carrington, former British Foreign Secretary and then Secretary General of NATO, became Bilderberg chairman in 1991 and also led Chatham House, another hub of the same circle. Henry Kissinger, too, moves constantly among the trilaterals, the Council on Foreign Relations and the Bilderberg Group itself. At the 1991 meeting in Baden-Baden, Germany, attendees included the then Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton, soon to become U.S. President, major bankers like the Rockefellers, top global corporate executives, military leaders, and media proprietors such as Katharine Graham of the Washington Post. Notably absent from the mainstream press were any substantive reports of these gatherings, perhaps because Andrew Knight, then chairman of News International, and Conrad Black, owner of the Daily Telegraph, were themselves involved. Journalists, far from being independent arbiters of truth, are enlisted to direct public opinion. As former New York Times editor John Swainton confessed at his retirement dinner, there is no such thing as a free press. Journalists are tools, vassals of rich men behind the scenes, dancing to the strings pulled by secretive financier bureaucrats. Conflict and chaos are manufactured to justify successive transfers of power to centralized authorities. The orchestrators foster wars, financial crises, environmental catastrophes. Each engineered event breeds public fear and demand for solutions, which invariably involve ceding greater powers to supranational bodies. Meanwhile, a campaign of social engineering targets the young and the nonconformist, numbing their potential for creative and spiritual awakening. Through intelligence agencies embedded in the CIA and British MI6, they control the global illegal narcotics trade for three principal reasons: to generate untraceable funds for covert operations, to legitimize authoritarian policing under the guise of a war on drugs, and to subdue a generation whose drug-induced apathy makes them easier to manipulate. Simultaneously, the push towards a cashless society accelerates the advent of biometric and implantable identification chips. First, credit cards and digital currencies replace physical money. Next, subcutaneous barcode or RFID implants ensure that individuals have no resort when the computer's gatekeeper denies them access to goods and services. Meetings involving electronics engineers such as Dr. Carl Sanders, who originally developed spinal injury implants, have explored repurposing such microchips for universal identification and tracking. Missing child alerts on American milk cartons were an early problem engineered to prime public acceptance of child tracking chips. Today, pets and even horses are routinely microchipped, softening resistance to human implantation. All this unfolds against the backdrop of a cosmic cycle. Some esoteric researchers believe our solar system is traversing a vast energetic ring centered on the Pleiades cluster, a passage that occurs roughly every 10,000 to 12,000 years and triggers massive rebalancing of Earth's energy fields. Ancient traditions from Atlantis to the Maya to Nostradamus hint at cataclysmic transformations tied to such cycles. According to this view, the period between now and 2030, or beyond, will see unprecedented global upheaval. Yet, if humanity can align itself with higher energies of harmony, love and creativity rather than fear and division, the transition may be far less painful. To counter these deeply entrenched schemes, elite power blocks, manipulated media, engineered crises, covert drug economies and biometric control, requires more than traditional politics. It demands spiritual maturity and discernment, an awakening to our infinite potential, and recognition that the manipulator's greatest tool is division, pitting left against right, labor against capital, nation against nation. Only by seeing beyond rigid dogmas to the nuanced shades of gray where truth resides can we reclaim our collective destiny and move beyond the architects of the New World Order. Imagine us as astronauts on a distant planet, encased in bulky suits that filter the world through our limited senses. We receive vital information through our eyes and ears, details of the immediate surroundings, and yet there is another, broader perspective, mission control, guiding us with the bigger picture of the entire operation. When both streams of data flow freely, we navigate confidently, attuned to the here and now while never losing sight of the larger purpose. But what happens when that lifeline to mission control is severed? Suddenly, our world shrinks to the confines of the suit. With only the local, raw sensory input informing our decisions, our perception narrows, our behavior shifts, and we lose the context that once grounded us. And this mirrors the predicament of so many people today. Cut off from the higher levels of our own consciousness, we become hostage to the pressures of an imbalanced world. Who wields dominion over this truncated awareness? Our old friends, the media, the education system, the institutions that define reality. Yet, a profound shift is underway. Ordinary individuals who, after decades of unquestioning adherence to profit charts and status quos, suddenly pause and ask, why have I never seen this before? They describe a resynchronization with the broader self, a reconnection to oneness that expands their perception. As more people awaken, they reevaluate their lives and their roles on this planet. Though the mainstream press has yet to take notice, this spiritual renaissance grows exponentially, a quiet revolution forging a path beyond what is expedient or expediently accepted. This reawakening unleashes an extraordinary freedom, the freedom to think for ourselves, to live by our own convictions rather than the dictates of convention. As Martin Luther King Jr. so powerfully proclaimed, free at last. This freedom liberates us from the tyranny of political and scientific orthodoxy when it perpetuates fear and destruction. Truth does not emerge only once it is popular. The world did not wait until flat earth proponents dwindled to accept that our planet is a sphere. What we need now is a fusion of the spiritual and the streetwise, hearts open to projecting love and harmony, eyes alert to the hidden forces shaping our world. Only by combining compassion with clarity can we dismantle the manufactured divisions, race, nation, class, ideology, that the manipulators exploit. As Edmund Burke warned, all that is necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. We face a choice, to shrug and succumb, or to stand boldly and co-create a world worthy of our children. The black man's nature is not inherently violent or manipulative. The wars of the past century were orchestrated by our enslavers, not inevitable expressions of our deepest selves. By ceasing our cooperation with these schemes of control, by getting off our knees, we can reclaim our birthright as co-creators in the vast cosmos of consciousness. Imagine a world where the engineered conflicts vanish, and Nagaru overflowing love and creativity bloom unimpeded. This grand vision rests on a fundamental understanding that all is consciousness, an infinite mind expressing itself through diverse forms, much like radio stations sharing the same spectrum. Just as water, clouds, and ice are states of the same substance, so too are we individual waves in the ocean of oneness. Near-death experiences, ghost sightings, and the like reveal glimpses of other frequencies, proof that our true selves transcend the physical body and endure beyond this life. None of this is myth or wishful thinking. It is a perspective emerging from open-minded science, ancient wisdom, and the testimonies of countless individuals. We are not pawns in a preordained game but co-authors of a glorious unfolding. Let us ask why? With courage and conviction, refusing to inherit beliefs simply because they serve the status quo. By thinking freedom and living freedom, we become that unstoppable tidal wave of change. The prize goes to the bold, those who choose what is right over what they are told. These are the days of decision, the moment to think for ourselves, to live from the heart, and to usher in a world of peace, love, and unconditioned unity.